At that moment, I knew that all the things I had experienced in heaven was all true. It all started when I left work on a beautiful September day to take my then 12-year-old son to the dentist, a drive of about 30 miles. On the way home, my truck was making noise. I said to my son that I had better look at the engine before we entered the turnpike. When I pulled over on the side of the road, popped the hood, and started to look at the engine, I went blind. I rubbed my eyes thinking that when I finished with the truck, my vision will return. It didn't. I could hear my son's voice in front of my face. He was asking, "What's wrong with your eyes, Dad?" I couldn't see him, but I knew something bad was happening. That's when my heart started pounding fast, and I started sweating. I didn't know what was happening to me. I thought I was having a heart attack or a stroke. I told my son to run across the street and get help. So he did. When I tried to get back in the truck, I noticed my legs didn't work. I fell against the truck fender, holding myself up with my arm until it gave out. I fell to the ground. I heard people running towards me. They asked what was wrong. I replied that I didn't know, but I couldn't see and my legs weren't working. The men picked me up, carried me to their garage, and called an ambulance. When the ambulance arrived, they took me to the hospital and performed a CAT scan. That's when the doctor told me that I had a ruptured brain tumor. They couldn't explain why it was bleeding and then quit bleeding, but that there was nothing they could do, and that I was going to die. They called my family, and the doctor held my hand for 6 hours. I was still alive, so they transported me to a hospital in Pittsburgh that performed the surgery I needed. During my surgery, I was in a tunnel. It took no physical effort to move up this tunnel because it was all done with my mind. The more I thought about going home to heaven, the faster I traveled through the tunnel. When I stopped thinking about traveling upwards, I stopped completely. I then reached my arms out and put my hands into the wall of the tunnel. The walls were about 3 feet in diameter and made of black clouds. Then I thought about moving again. When I reached the end of the tunnel, I noticed the most beautiful sight I have ever seen. I saw huge, large, beautiful yellow daisies as far as the eye can see. The landscape was all flat with no boundaries. I was completely filled with intense love, such that I had never felt before. I noticed that I didn't have a body and was hovering a couple of feet over the daisies. Next, I saw a spirit standing on the left side of the exit of the tunnel. He was pointing with his left arm towards the middle of the field. When I looked closer, I noticed a tree in the middle of this field of daisies. I then knew this is where he wanted me to go. The tree was about 3 miles away, but I reached it in a few seconds. I was amazed at the size of this 20-foot wide tree. I was still hovering over the daisies while touching the bark of the tree. When I looked up into the branches of the tree, I noticed that the sky was all white. It was a white that was so bright that it almost hurt my eyes to look at it. There wasn't a sun or any color in the sky. I only saw the brightest white clouds that I have ever seen. I then took an emotional inventory. I was not mad, sad, or scared. I didn't miss anyone. I was just filled with a love like I had never felt before. As I was looking at the sky, a spirit darted out of the clouds and was headed straight for me. She flew right up to my face and looked right into my eyes. She intensely looked into my eyes for about 15 seconds as she read my soul. In an instant, I knew everything about her, and she knew everything about me. She then moved away from me, saying, "You have to go back. It's not your time to come to the heavenly kingdom. When it's your time, you will come here again." I told her, "I don't want to go back. Bodies are heavy and they hurt." She replied, "I know that, but Heavenly Father wants you to go back and do work for him." I said, "Okay, what does he want me to do?" She replied, "You will know when the time comes." I really didn't want to go back, but she convinced me to go back. She said the Heavenly Father wants him to go back and do work for him, and that while doing so, I would be protected. She also told me not to be discouraged by other people's negative judgments. At that point, I knew I was special, and that I wasn't going to die from my surgery. I didn't really know how I was going to be protected, but I knew it was a very good thing. We talked a while more. She told me that Heavenly Father doesn't want us to judge each other, and He wants us to all be equal. He wants us to enjoy life, be happy and grateful. The most that He wants from us all is to help each other. He wants us all to help each other more than we help ourselves. While we were talking under this massive tree, I noticed a small pond of clouds in the daisies. It was about 40 feet in diameter, and there was 6 spirits standing in the pond of clouds and looking down. Every once in a while, one spirit would bend over and pick up another spirit. It would cradle and embrace it in its arms, then look up and fly very fast into the clouds above. Then another spirit from above would fly down into the pond and takes the other spirit's place. This went on for some time. I then asked the angel what they were doing over there. She told me that they were watching hospitals, doctors, and very sick people, but they won't intervene with patients' illnesses. After speaking with this angel for some time, she moved away from me and flew straight up, through the tree, and didn't even dodge a branch. She vanished like a puff of smoke. I then knew it was time for me to go. I didn't know how I was going to get back, but I knew that I would be in a lot of pain. I wanted to remember as much as I could, so I looked around trying to remember every detail. I noticed that there weren't any bugs, cobwebs, bees, ants, or butterflies on the daisies. There was no wind, birds, or any sun. It was very quiet and calm. There was no time in heaven. I went back to my body. I was in so much pain. When I woke up in the recovery room, I noticed a man sitting across the hall behind glass. Every time I opened my eyes, he would look at his monitors, and then he would look at me. I knew after 3 or 4 times of doing this that he was watching me. After looking at me a few more times, he wasn't there. I had noticed that even with all the tubes and wires connected to me, all the hair on my body was standing up. I thought they gave me something in my IV to cause this. As I looked at my left arm, I noticed a lady standing there looking down at me with a big smile. She had long white hair down to her elbows. Her face and skin were all wrinkled, but what really stood out was her large, bright blue eyes. I then knew that she was the reason for the hair on my arm standing up. It was like the entire room was filled with static electricity. She asked me, "Do you know that Heavenly Father wants you to come back and do work for him?" I said, "Yes, that's what the angel told me under the tree. But she didn't tell me what he wants me to do. She only said that I would know when the time comes." She then put her finger on my lips. My whole entire body felt like someone just dumped a 5-gallon bucket of water down my throat and filled me up, all the way to my toes. Just then, all the alarms started to beep. The lady turned, walked to the door still smiling, and turned left. A few seconds later, the young man who was watching me came into the room and said, "Tim, you are doing great. What happened?" I said, "I don't know. I feel good. Where did that lady go?" He asked, "What lady?" I said, "The lady who was just here with the long white hair." He said, "I didn't see anyone, but I will go look if you want me to." I said, "Would you please?" He said, "Sure," as he went out and turned left. When he came back, he said, "Tim, you are the only one on this floor and the doors are all locked. You are the only one here." At that moment, I knew that all the things I had experienced in heaven was all true. The woman was another angel. I knew there was something very special was going to happen in my life, and that I was going to be protected. I wrote a book about my entire experience as requested by this angel and the priests at my church. Please read the book to find out about the gift that these angels gave me.